Here's the uncomfortable truth. The 4% rule doesn't fail people at retirement. It fails them 10 years later when fixing it is almost impossible, because that's the quiet risk with the 4% rule. It doesn't usually fail you on day one of retirement. It fails you years later, after you've built routines, after prices rise, and after changing course feels scary. The most expensive mistakes are the ones that feel fine at first, and once you see how this breaks, you'll never look at a calculator the same way. Let's be honest. The 4% rule is comforting. It gives your brain a finish line. Save this amount, withdraw this amount, and you're good. That relief is real because retirement planning is scary. People don't just want math, they want reassurance. Imagine this. You're 61, you've worked for decades, and you're tired. You want a clean answer, not a new homework assignment, so when a rule shows up, you hug it like a life raft. A couple I'll call Dana and Luis have $900,000 saved. They're not flashy, they're careful. When they hear 4%, they translate it as permission. We can finally breathe. When something feels solved, we stop checking it. And retirement punishes people who stop checking. The 4% rule came from research using historical market data. It asked one narrow question: what withdrawal rate survived most 30-year periods in the past? That's it. It was never a personal promise. It didn't know your health, your spouse, your taxes, your housing costs, or your future. Think of it like a map printed years ago. Useful for direction, but it doesn't know today's traffic. Imagine this. Two people retire with the same $1 million. They both take 4%. One retires into a strong market. One retires into a rough market. Same rule. Different life. A rule can be right and still be wrong for your timing. Now let's talk about timing, the monster the rule can't see. Retirement is not one big average. It is a chain of years, and the order matters. If the market drops early, withdrawals hurt more because you sell shares when they're cheap and you never get those shares back. That's sequence of returns risk. Big phrase, simple idea. Bad early years can damage a good plan. Imagine this vignette. Mark retires at 65 with $1.2 million. Year 1 is fine. Year 2 is down. Year 3 is down again. Mark still needs the same groceries, the same utilities, the same insurance, so he withdraws anyway. Those withdrawals lock in the loss, and even when the market later recovers, his share count is smaller. Now add one more reality. Most people spend more early in retirement. More travel, more hobbies, more helping family. That's normal, but it means early withdrawals can be even heavier than planned. The market can recover while your plan gets weaker. And here's how smart people misuse the rule without realizing it. Most people don't misuse the 4% rule because they're careless. They misuse it because they're human. Once a number feels safe, it becomes sacred. And when it's sacred, you stop adjusting. You keep withdrawing the same amount even when reality changes. Dana and Luis see scary headlines. Friends say, just stay the course. The calculator still says, fine, so they do nothing. Not because they want to gamble, because they don't have a plan for what adjust actually looks like. Here's the trap. The rule feels simple, so people treat it like it should be simple to follow. But real life isn't simple. Inflation isn't simple. Taxes aren't simple. Healthcare definitely isn't simple. A rule without a backup plan becomes a trap. So, should you throw the rule away? Let's handle the objections. Objection 1. So are you saying the 4% rule is useless? No. It's a useful starting point. It's like a speed limit sign. Guidance, not a guarantee that the road is safe. Objection 2. But it worked historically. Yes, historically. History is not a person. History doesn't get sick. History doesn't help adult kids. History doesn't lose a spouse. History doesn't face new tax rules or new insurance prices. People do. Objection 3. If I don't follow a rule, I'll feel lost. That's fair, so don't delete the rule. Upgrade it. Add decision points. Add guardrails. Add a plan for what if the first years are bad. Here's what guardrails can look like in plain English. If the portfolio is down, you take a little less. If the portfolio is up, you can take a little more. If inflation spikes, you get more selective about what you increase. You don't need perfect math to do this. You need a pre-decided response. Objection 4. Is lowering the withdrawal rate the fix? Sometimes, but the deeper fix is flexibility. Even 3% can fail emotionally if you refuse to adapt, and 4% can work if you have buffers and options. The magic isn't the percentage. The magic is the plan around it. So let's build the plan around it, starting with the simplest safety tool. Here's a better question than almost any calculator. How many options do I still have if next year is ugly? Options can be boring, but boring is powerful. Options look like a cash buffer, so you can skip selling in a down year. Options look like a flexible travel budget. Options look like delaying a big purchase. Options look like part-time income you can turn on. Let me make this real. Most people don't need to cut everything. They need to know which levers exist. Travel is a lever. Car upgrades are a lever. Gifts and help to family are levers. Even the timing of big home projects is a lever. Consider this. Susan retires at 62. She keeps a cash buffer for rough years. When the market dips, she pauses the big trips for 1 year. Not forever. 1 year. That one decision protects her portfolio more than chasing the perfect rate. You don't need a perfect number. You need room to move. Now let's talk about the sneakiest risk because it doesn't look like math at all. Here's another reason the 4% rule can feel fine at first and painful later. Prices don't rise evenly. People think inflation is one number, but retirees don't buy one number. You buy groceries, utilities, insurance, and healthcare. And those can rise faster than the headline inflation rate. That means your real life can get more expensive even when the news says inflation is cooling. Now add taxes. Taxes can change. Your tax bracket can change. The way withdrawals are taxed can change. And if you're pulling from multiple accounts, taxable, IRA, Roth, your withdrawal plan is not one simple percentage. It's a strategy. Kevin retires and takes 4% from his IRA because it's the biggest account. At first it feels simple, but then required minimum distributions show up later. His taxable income rises. More of his Social Security becomes taxable. Medicare premiums can also rise for higher income. Suddenly his 4% isn't just spending money. Part of it is feeding taxes and higher premiums. None of this means you're doomed. It means a single percentage isn't a complete plan. A simple rule can hide complex leaks. So, how do you keep the simplicity without the blind spots? The biggest danger of the 4% rule isn't the spreadsheet. It's what the spreadsheet does to your brain. A number creates certainty. Certainty reduces thinking. Reduced thinking increases risk. That's anchoring. You anchor on 4%. And everything else gets forced to fit that anchor. Anchoring sounds harmless until you see it in real decisions. If you anchor to $80,000 a year, you'll fight reality to protect $80,000. Instead of adjusting calmly, you either ignore problems or overreact later. Consider this. Tom tells his wife, "We can spend $80,000 a year. The rule says so." Then property taxes jump, insurance goes up, groceries climb. Tom feels confused because he treated the rule like a promise. When reality changes, the anchor doesn't move unless you move it. And that leads to the most common 10 years later failure people never plan for. Here's how quiet failure often looks. Not bankruptcy, not disaster, just shrinking freedom. Consider this. It's year 10. Linda is 75. Her portfolio didn't blow up, but it didn't grow the way the projection promised. Now she's afraid to spend on what matters. She delays dental work. She delays home repairs. She feels anxious every time the market is in the news. Another common version, one spouse dies. Income drops. Expenses don't drop as much as people think. And the survivor feels trapped because the plan assumed 2 people, not 1. That's why 30-year averages can feel cruel in real life. Real life doesn't come in averages. The cost isn't always losing money, it's losing peace. So what's the smarter way to use the 4% rule without getting trapped by it? Here's a simple bad year playbook. Let's make the adjustment plan painfully simple. Pick one trigger you can remember. For example, if the portfolio is down from its high, you freeze raises for a year. That doesn't mean you cut everything. It means you stop automatically increasing withdrawals just because the calendar flipped. Then pick one lever you're willing to pull. Maybe it's delaying a remodel, maybe it's trimming travel, maybe it's switching which account you pull from for a year. The goal is not to punish yourself. The goal is to avoid selling too many shares at the worst time. Small adjustments early can prevent big pain later. Now, let's lock this into a simple system you can actually follow. Here's the upgrade. Treat the 4% rule as a starting guess, not a finish line. Then build a simple system to adapt. Step 1. Decide what spending is fixed and what is flexible. Step 2. Decide what you will do in a down year before the down year happens. Step 3. Revisit the plan every year, like a pilot checking instruments. Step 4. Measure success by options, not one percentage. Now imagine this. Instead of saying, I withdraw 4% no matter what, you say, I have a plan for good years, okay years, and bad years. That turns a fragile plan into a resilient plan. You don't need certainty. You need resilience. And if you want a simple way to pressure test your plan without fluff, here's what to do next. If your retirement plan only works when markets behave and life cooperates, that doesn't mean you've failed, but it does mean you should stress test it, not to scare yourself, not to chase perfection, just to protect your options. If you want, I'll put a simple retirement reality check worksheet below this video. It's not a sales pitch. It's a set of questions that reveal weak spots before they become expensive. Use it, mark it up, and talk it through with whoever helps you plan. And remember, planning isn't predicting, planning is preparing. Because in retirement, the ability to adapt is worth it.